Welcome to our Hong Kong brief program. Today, we've got a mixed bag of news to share with you, so let's dive right in. First up, we're casting our net over to Western Australia where rock lobster fishers are holding their breath, hoping China will lift its live exports ban. With Australian wine tariffs recently dropped, there's a glimmer of hope on the horizon. But, as we're all too aware, hope floats in uncertain waters, especially since the industry's been navigating through some choppy trade restrictions for almost 4 years now. Meanwhile, Australian winemakers are popping corks over the end of China's tariffs, but are being nudged to not put all their grapes in one basket, given the ever-evolving tastes and tariffs in the global market. Over in Hong Kong, we're seeing a push towards gender equality in the workplace with the launch of a regional index aimed at boosting women in leadership roles. This initiative is tracking progress in areas like maternity leave and equal pay. On a different note, Hong Kong's container throughput ranking is predicted to take a dip amidst stiff competition from mainland China. And in the world of sports, the Hong Kong Football Association is keeping an open mind after some candid feedback from the national team's coach, while the city's lacrosse team is showing some serious hustle in the Hong Kong Lacrosse Open. Lastly, we're touching on some heavier topics. The US is tightening visa restrictions on certain Hong Kong officials over rights concerns, and Macau bids farewell to its horse racing tradition. Meanwhile, Radio Free Asia is shutting down its Hong Kong bureau amid growing concerns over press freedom. So, whether it's the hopeful lifting of trade bans, initiatives for gender equality, or challenges to freedom of expression, there's a lot brewing. Please stay tuned for the detailed content on these stories and more. Rock lobster fishers treading water waiting for China to lift live exports ban. ABC. Western Australian crayfishers are hopeful that the Chinese government will lift tariffs on their produce, following the recent announcement that tariffs on Australian wine will end. China imposed trade barriers on about $20 billion of Australian exports almost 4 years ago, with restrictions slowly being lifted since then. However, restrictions on the trade of Western rock lobster and beef remain in place. While there have been no direct live lobster exports to China since 2020, it is believed that the product is still entering the country through Hong Kong and Vietnam. The Australian rock lobster industry heavily relies on Chinese demand, and the restrictions have impacted fishers. Despite the bans, Australia can still ship frozen rock lobster to China, although crayfishers say this is more costly and requires more infrastructure and staff. The industry remains hopeful that the live export ban will be lifted in the near future. Winemakers cheer end to China's tariffs, but keen to grow in other markets. The Sydney Morning Herald. Australian winemakers are being advised to diversify their businesses and not overly rely on the Chinese market, despite China dropping its tariffs on Australian wine. After China imposed tariffs on Australian wine last year, many winemakers were hit hard, losing a significant portion of their revenue. While the removal of tariffs is good news, industry bodies are cautioning winemakers to continue expanding into other markets. The Chinese market has changed considerably since 2020, with new wines entering the market and locals cutting back on alcohol consumption due to cost of living pressures. Index can help boost women in leadership. SCMP opinion. Hong Kong is set to house a regional index of women-friendly workplace policies. The Women's Workplace Index aims to track the progress of Hong Kong and Asian companies in areas such as maternity leave, equal pay, flexible work, and sexual harassment policies. The index will also act as an accreditation scheme, making data available online. So far, Sino Group, CLP Power, Linklaters, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and Manulife have signed up as members. The index comes at a time when the pandemic has reinforced gender disparity, with many women losing flexible work arrangements. Moody's Investor Service states that increasing female participation in the labor market and management is important in the face of global economic challenges. Hong Kong's container throughput global ranking may fall to number 10 in 2023. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong's container throughput global ranking is predicted to fall to 10th place in 2023 due to competition from mainland China, according to the city's transport and logistics minister. Hong Kong's ranking has slipped from 3rd in the world in 2008 to 9th between 2020 and 2022. The decline is attributed to competition from Chinese ports in terms of cost and convenience. Hong Kong's government has been working to enhance the competitiveness of its port, with plans to develop it into a leading international maritime center that is green and smart. Hong Kong FA open-minded but no promise of change after coach's AGM blast. South China Morning Post. The chairman of the Hong Kong Football Association, HKFA, Eric Fok Kai-shan, has responded to national team coach Jordan Anderson's criticisms of the standard of domestic matches in the city. Fok stated that the HKFA is open-minded about reforming the game in Hong Kong but must consider the conflicting interests of member clubs. Anderson has expressed frustration at the quality and intensity of the local league and has called for better and harder matches to improve Hong Kong football. Fok emphasized the need for communication and collaboration between the HKFA and clubs to develop a common goal. U.S. to impose visa restrictions on Hong Kong officials over rights concerns. Al Jazeera. The United States has announced that it will impose new visa restrictions on a number of Hong Kong officials responsible for the crackdown on rights and freedoms in Hong Kong. This comes in response to the enactment of a national security law in the Chinese-ruled territory, referred to as Article 23, which grants the government new powers to crack down on all forms of dissent. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the legislation could be used to suppress dissent and further China's campaign to intimidate activists abroad. The statement did not identify the officials who would be targeted. China's gambling hub of Macau holds its final horse race, ending a tradition of over 40 years. Associated Press. Macau's horse racing track hosted its final races on Saturday, marking the end of the sport in the city. The decision to terminate the contract with the Macau Jockey Club came at the request of the Macau Horse Race Company, which cited operational challenges. Horse racing in Macau has struggled with economic challenges in recent years and has yet to rebound from the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. In neighboring Hong Kong, horse racing remains popular and profitable. Hosts eye success at Hong Kong Lacrosse Open after beating defending champions. South China Morning Post. The Hong Kong men's lacrosse team has defeated defending champions Fogo Japan in the Hong Kong Lacrosse Open, giving themselves a chance to dethrone them in the final. The hosts won the match 7-2, maintaining a perfect record in their 3 matches. Assistant coach Jordan Wong praised his team's energy and hustle, as well as their execution of the game plan. With a mix of experienced and young players, Wong is confident that history will not repeat and that his team is well prepared for the final. Fresh wave of Hong Kongers leave city on second day of Easter holiday weekend. South China Morning Post. Over 400,000 people left Hong Kong on the second day of the Easter weekend, with numbers steadily increasing from the previous day. The number of inbound travelers over the same period was 198,000. Some large shopping centers tried to attract customers by offering free parking for the first time in over 20 years, whilst the government advised residents to stay in the city due to the prevalence of COVID-19 in mainland China. Hong Kong has seen a surge in outbound travel over the past year, with more than 580,000 Hong Kongers leaving the city on the first day of the Easter holiday last year. The government has been criticized for failing to stimulate local consumption, as Hong Kong residents increasingly choose to spend their holidays in mainland China. As we mark Easter, Hong Kong would also welcome the hope of renewal. SCMP Opinion. Hong Kong residents are taking advantage of the long Easter weekend to travel abroad, leaving local businesses concerned about a hollowed-out city. over 681,000 people departed from Hong Kong on Good Friday, negatively impacting the catering and retail sectors. However, those who have remained in the city can enjoy various activities such as art installations, Easter egg hunts, and taking selfies with an Easter bunny. Christian leaders have also used the occasion to convey messages of hope and unity amidst global conflicts and economic challenges. City Football Group's Chinese club Shenzhen will get first win soon, Coach Tato. South China Morning Post. Shenzhen City coach Jesus Tato remains optimistic despite the club's disappointing start to the Chinese Super League (CSL) season. The newly rebranded club collected their first point after a stoppage-time equalizer denied them victory against Songzhou Mighty Lions. Tato acknowledges that it will not be easy in their first season in the CSL, but believes a victory will come soon. Some fans on Chinese social media have called for better players and a change in coaching tactics. Despite the criticism, Tato remains confident in the team's abilities. China developer Wanda sells 60% of mall unit in $8.3 billion deal. Nikkei Asia. Private equity firm PAG and a group of investors have announced an $8.3 billion investment for a 60% stake in Dalian Wanda's mall unit. The deal will see Dalian Wanda retain 40% in Newland Commercial Management, the holding company of Zhuhai Wanda Commercial Management Group. Other investors in the deal include CITIC Capital, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, Mubadala Investment Company, and Ares Management Corporation. Radio Free Asia closes Hong Kong bureau over journalist safety fears. The Independent. U.S.-funded news organization Radio Free Asia, RFA, is closing its Hong Kong bureau due to concerns over press freedom and safety. RFA President Bei Fong cited hostility from authorities and the passage of a controversial law criminalizing criticism of the state as reasons for the closure. The law, known as Article 23, was passed by Hong Kong's pro-Beijing government in March and builds upon the national security law imposed by China in 2020. The U.S. State Department expressed concern over the suppression of media freedom in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong government declined to comment on RFA's decision but criticized scaremongering and smearing remarks. The new Article 23 law introduces harsher penalties for offenses such as treason, sedition, and external interference. Since the imposition of the national security law in 2020, several media outlets critical of the government have been forced to shut down. RFA has operated in Hong Kong since 1996. Pig organ transplants in China and the U.S. open an ethical can of worms. South China Morning Post. The recent successful transplants of pig organs into humans have highlighted the potential of xenotransplantation, but ethical concerns about disease transmission and the psychological impact on recipients remain. The risk of transmitting infectious agents is the main concern, as some may not be detected before transplant. Animals used in xenotransplantation are typically genetically modified to reduce the risk of organ rejection, but there are also concerns about human cells being inserted into animal embryos. Despite these concerns, xenotransplantation has the potential to bridge the gap between the demand for and supply of human organs for transplantation. Photos of people looking at solar eclipses from 1907 to the present day. Yahoo! On April 8, a total solar eclipse will be visible across North America, turning day into night for millions of people from Mexico to Canada. This is a rare occurrence, with only 13 total solar eclipses visible in the United States over the past century. The next total solar eclipse in the U.S. won't happen until 2033. The eclipse will be at least partially visible in all 50 states, except Alaska, and entirely visible in 13 states along the path of totality. In anticipation of this event, Yahoo News has compiled a collection of historical images of people around the world looking at solar eclipses from 1907 to the present day. These images show people using various methods to safely view eclipses, such as using dark glasses, special filters, and protective shields. Solar eclipses have always been a fascinating phenomenon for people throughout history, and these photos capture the wonder and excitement that they inspire. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email,